This is the Rocket City Retirement Show with Cris Wallace. Cris loves educating people in person and over the airwaves. Whether it's retirement planning, investing, tax, or legacy, Cris prides himself in helping protect what matters to you. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show.
Hello, I'm Luann Fulmer, and we welcome you to the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm here with certified financial planner and financial advisor, Cris Wallace. He's president at WG Financial Group. We have a great show for you today. Of course, always talking about retirement planning, and Cris always gives us great advice. So if you need to reach out to Cris, and I'm sure you will, you'll have questions, believe me, 256-937-2010. That's the way to reach him. 256-937-2010. Now, you can also text the word visit to that number, okay, and get that complimentary discovery session. So those are ways that you can get on Chris's calendar. Remember, check us out on Facebook, too. Just go to WG Financial Group 256 and find us online anytime at WGFinancialGroup.com. And also remember, now our show is available anywhere you get your podcast, okay? Just look for
Rocket City Retirement Show. I'll help you out.
Yeah, just look for Rocket City Retirement Show. Cris, hello to you.
Hello to you, Luann. You might need a cup of coffee this morning.
I'm drinking one.
Yeah, so just go to those platforms and just search Rocket City Retirement Show. Actually, we have a lot of people that actually do that nowadays, and I'll get emails or phone calls from people asking me, this week was a rerun, right? And so, yeah. So I'll kind of talk about that for a quick second as we lead into it. Basically, over the last couple of weeks, so all my shows go through compliance because, obviously I'm an advisor, so I have a compliance department that reviews all of my stuff.
Right.
And yeah, we've been battling it out a little bit. Let's just say they haven't liked a couple of things that we've said. And it really the way that we've said them was, one of the problems one week. It sounded a little too testimonial. And I get that, right? I mean, we can't do that. And, we were not intending to do that, but compliance said a little too much.
There's a fine line. There is a fine line, Cris. There is.
Mm-hmm. You want to share situations and you want to be real with people and the listener because, the people can relate to the stories and, situations that are similar to theirs. So that was, 1 week we had to basically scrap a whole show. And then last week we did a show. I had an actual guest on, and compliance actually hasn't fully rejected that one. They just got it on hold for further review.
I wonder why, huh?
Well, the SEC, has certain guidelines that they, when you disseminate information, they have guidelines, right? Okay. So they're just double checking it and making sure that, I guess, things are factual. And I'm hoping that show can be released at some point because that was another hour of my time.
And it was a good show. I learned a lot.
Oh, it'd be awesome. But, so compliance, they are our friends, even though when I got the call last Friday, let me know it was hung up. I was not real happy.
Yeah.
We had to do a rerun, but again, we're all on the same team and we're all trying to make sure that accurate and efficient information gets out to the listening audience. So again, I do appreciate them, and they listen to these shows, so they're going to hear me talking about them. So I got to be nice, right? So
you always are nice.
Yeah. So let's hop into the headlines, Luann. So really, since I want to talk about since the last rate cut, because we now, for the first time in several years, have seen a rate decrease. And we saw that on 9/18. The Feds dropped the interest rates, or the Fed overnight rate, by 50 basis points. And if you were listening prior to that, we told you it was coming. And I remember I told you there was a big battle between whether it was going to be 25 basis points or 50 basis points. And if you were on my Facebook page or company Facebook page, I was posting the futures, screenshots of that, saying, man, it's just really going back and forth. And they ended up, cutting it 50 basis points. Well, right off the bat, the market was kind of freaking out a little bit, and then things kind of settled out, right? And when we look at the NASDAQ and the S&P, the NASDAQ since 9/18 is up like 3%, and the S&P is up about 2%. And the aggregate bond index has just basically been kind of flat. So I think when it comes to the bond index, when we're looking at like the 10-year Treasury yield, we saw the 10-year Treasury yield around the 1st of July really start to drop off. And that was the first indication that rate cuts were coming. But we had to be cautious about it a little bit because we saw that same head fake in October of last year. The Feds came out said some things in some of their meetings, and the 10-year started to drop. And then right around Christmas, it started to reverse course and say, oh man, we overestimated. They're not ready to cut rates yet. And so the 10-year rose back up. And then we saw it again kind of drop down just a few months ago. And that was indicative of a rate cut. Now, the reason we were much more confident this time around is because the CPI number that gets reported was continuing to trend down. So, and I know there's a lot of listeners out there going, yeah, but Chris, inflation's still really high, and I don't believe the numbers. And listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I go to the same grocery stores that you go to. I put the same gas in my car. I pay some of the same insurance companies that all of you guys do. I'm not denying all that. But when I'm looking at like the data that gets reported and what it's causing or not causing the markets to do, that's kind of what I'm referring to. So as those numbers came out, we saw that we saw the 10-year Treasury continue to drop. And then on the backside of that, we started to see unemployment rising. And with CPI falling and inflation falling down according to the numbers and unemployment rising, that really gave a strong confidence that the 10-year was right this time and kind of accurately predicting there was going to be a rate cut. And of course, there was. Yeah. So what's next? Well, okay. So at least right now, the market has priced in at least 2 additional cuts this year. I've heard rumors that there could be 75 basis point cuts through the rest of the year, but there's at least 2 been priced in at this point. So where the 10-year yield is currently, and this is probably why we've seen it just kind of flatten off here since the 18th of September, is it's kind of searching for new information. Does it need to price in a little bit more? And so I think when we start looking at inflationary numbers and unemployment numbers, keeping a watch on those will kind of tell us what the Feds may or may not do to some degree. So, that's what I would expect the rest of the year. I would expect at least 2 more rate cuts, probably 25 and 25 the last part of the year. But again, I think it will be, somewhat data dependent. So the other thing that I'm hearing a lot, and this is the problem with so many people having an opinion. And listen, I have my own opinions, and I'm on the radio, and there's, thousands of people probably tuning in, and, my opinions aren't always right, but I try to be logical, in my thinking and the way that I'm, trying to review information. But there's so much information out there, and I've seen all of these graphs and charts on X about, when the yield curve uninverts. So if we just take a step back and we go back a couple of years ago when the 2 and the 10-year Treasury inverted, that usually is a pretty solid sign that a recession is on the way. And typically from the time of inversion, the average time to recession is somewhere between 12 and 18 months. And it's gone as much as 22 months, that is. The yield curve was inverted for nearly 2 years, and now it's uninverted, okay? And there's been no recession. But now that the yield curve is uninverted, now I see all these charts and graphs about, now when the yield curve uninverts, there's going to be a recession. Here's kind of the deal. Like a broke clock is right twice a day. Yeah. And some of these people predicting these types of events are eventually going to be right. I mean, I could sit here on the radio today and say, there's going to be a recession. There's going to be a recession. And probably the 53rd time I said it, maybe I'm right. And eventually it's going to be right. Yeah. I want to throw some numbers out here. Since I believe it's 1929, and I don't have this number in front of me, and so compliance will ask me for data on this, so I'll have it for them. But I believe the numbers we pulled, since 1929, the market has only been negative more than 6 times. I'm sorry. I said that wrong. Been negative more than 20% 6 times. So there's been like 90 some odd years, and of those 90 some odd years, we've got 66 of those years that are positive. Yeah. And of the negative years, the market's only been negative more than 20% 6 times, and it's only been negative more than 30% 3 times. So when you add all of that together, being negative more than 20% of the time, it only happens about 6.5% of the time.
Wow. See? So it's the market's positive more of the time.
That's exactly my point here. So we're always worried And the reason I bring this up is all of these graphs and charts. Oh man, when the yield curve uninverts, and whenever there's a 50 basis point rate hike, it happened in 2000 and happened in 2008. There was a historic crash. I mean, just on and on and on. And I think you have to keep, the big picture in mind when it comes to your retirement planning. You have to have a long-term outlook on your investments. And when you're talking about the market in general, the market is positive over this time frame that I'm referring to, since going back to like 1929. The market's positive like 75% of the time. And of the 75% of the time, 73% of the time is actually positive double digits.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's when we look at this, we're worried about times that, things that happen like 6% of the time. And there's a lot of engineers out there listening to the show, and you make decisions off data and statistics. But when it comes to money, it's a lot more emotional. It becomes really personal, and we tend to turn a little bit, more pessimistic. So all of this in a nutshell, there's just some data for everybody to kind of chew on. In a nutshell, I don't know if a recession's coming, but what I can tell you that I think a lot of people are overlooking is the historic amount of stimulus that was put into the system during the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, when Donald Trump was in office, they pushed a lot of stimulus into the markets to help people out because they didn't know what was happening, and everybody's got their own view of COVID, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, we didn't know what was happening, and a lot of stimulus was pushed into the market. Actually, we had stimulus in the hands of just about everybody under a certain income limit, and then all of a sudden you couldn't spend it all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then Biden gets in office, and they introduced the Build Back Better plan, and that pushed even more into the market. So if you go look at the money supply, there was a huge bubble that happened in late 2020 and 2021, where just all of this liquidity was pushed into the market. Now, when the economy was opened up, now you had all this pent up demand, so everybody's out spending money, and you've got suppliers that are behind, and you got inflation kind of running away. But I don't think that people are taking into account that some of that is still in the system. And I kind of look at it this way. When you think about the market and how much money was pushed into the system, I almost think that the economy and some of the signals are somewhat diluted and watered down. So think of it when you go to your ice maker, you get a glass of ice, like let's say you got a clear glass, and you fill it up with ice, and then you go get some Coke. All right. So you pour your Coke in there, or your Dr. Pepper, Diet Coke, whatever you drink, you pour it in there, and then you're like, okay, I don't want to drink it right now. And you go somewhere else in the house for 2 hours, and you forget about it, and you come back to that glass of Coke. And now you have this translucent glass of Coke. Yep. You no longer have Coke. You've got watered down, watery, nasty Coke that you dump out at that point, right? Well, I kind of think the ice in this glass of Coke is kind of like all the stimulus that got pushed into the market. It's kind of diluted some of the signals. And the reason I bring this up is if you look at the first quarter and almost really the first half of 2023, so we're going back to last year, many of the active managers had shifted away from stocks at that time because they expected a recession. Because if you look at the yield curve inverted back in 22. But then what happened in 23? It was actually a pretty good year. So all of the signals that are normally, and I'm doing my little quotations here, kind of there and available, it didn't work. And 2023 ended up being a pretty good year. And there's articles out there from Morningstar that said like active managers just totally blew 2023. Most of them did because they guessed wrong. And that was because I believe that the market has been somewhat diluted, and some of the signals that we normally follow, maybe are not as reliable as today. And I think for people trying to compare, 2008 to, now, I don't think you can do that. I don't think the economy is still in the same type of situation that it was back in 2007 with the mortgage problem that we had and the subprime and all of that. It's just a different situation. So, you can look at charts and graphs and honestly, I think Richard said this before on the show, you can kind of manipulate data if you want to. I can go pull charts and graphs of various times and say, oh, look, it looks just like this time. And again, I'm not saying that a recession is not on the way. But what I am saying is that, I don't think you should abandon your retirement plan, because at the end of the day, this show is about retirement planning, and your investments are a piece of that, just like your income is a piece of that, just like your insurance, your Medicare insurance, your long-term care, your tax situation, your estate and legacy planning. All of that is a part of the retirement plan. And I think you need to stay focused on the long term and then stay focused on the plan, because what is going to happen to everybody listening to this show that is not retired? See, we have pre-retirees and retirees are the majority of our client base. And what is going to happen when you go to retire is you're going to have these things I call retirement feelings, and they ain't going to be good for most of you. You're going to be worried, and rightfully so. You're turning off that faucet of income, as we like to call it on our show. When you do that, you're going to think, oh my goodness, I don't have a job anymore. And do I have enough money to last all the way through my retirement? Because I don't know when I'm going to pass away. So the feeling of wanting to hang on to your money and kind of push it, in a safe place, you're going to have those feelings. You're going to have these fearful feelings, and you're going to read things and you're going to think, well, oh my gosh, what if that really does happen? I don't have the job anymore. Honey, what if that happens to us? We got to do this with our money. And it's going to cause you to make, if you're not careful, some poor decisions without having the proper guidance alongside of you. So, and the other thing that's going to take a little while when you retire, not including the feelings, is it's going to take you a little bit of time to develop what I call the retirement rhythm. There is a rhythm to retirement. There's a rhythm to what you're doing in life today. I know that when I get up in the morning, I make coffee. If Jen doesn't beat me up, and not beat me up physically, if she doesn't beat me out of bed.
Yeah.
Actually, that doesn't even sound right.
That doesn't sound right.
If Jen gets up before I do and makes the coffee,
there it is.
My rhythm is get up, have coffee, do a little quiet time, and then go to the gym, do my workout, and then I come home and work all day, come home, spend time with the family, go to bed. There's this rhythm in my life, and it's very, very constant, and it's almost habitual in some sense. Well, that rhythm changes when you get into retirement, and you have to develop your retirement rhythm. And that means, how you're getting paid. Do I space out my withdrawals to feel like a paycheck? In other words, if I'm getting Social Security and pension at the beginning of the month, and I need some additional money to kind of bridge that gap to cover all my expenses, do I take that withdrawal around the middle of the month, or maybe the third week of the month, so that it feels like, because remember, a lot about retirement is feeling. Mm-hmm. Do I take the payment around the second or third week of the month to feel like I'm getting paychecks? Because for 30 or 40 years, I've received those paychecks. So, doing those types of things and developing what I call that financial or that retirement rhythm, I think is really, really important for the retiree to really focus on getting in that rhythm, thinking about, what you're going to do during your day. Because before retirement, you need to put thought into that. What's it going to look like? So when you get into retirement, you can get into that retirement rhythm a little sooner. So we are halfway through the segment, Luann. I want to give our number out for those that are wanting to call in and do what we call a discovery session. You're listening to the Rocket City Retirement Show. This is Cris Wallace. I'm here with Luann Fulmer today, and our number is 256-937-2010. Again, our number is 256-937-2010. Luann, we got a bunch of stuff to get to today.
I know, we do.
You've pulled a couple of articles, which I'm appreciative of. Uh-huh. So one of the articles that we'll kind of dive into is 2 in 5 Americans regret not saving enough. So that'll be interesting to look at those statistics. Mm-hmm. And then what a recession could do to upend plans for people approaching retirement. So there's some steps that, quote unquote, I'm doing my quotation marks again.
Yeah.
These experts tell you to do. So we're going to talk about that. And so we are rocking and rolling already on the Rocket City Retirement Show.
All right. We thank you so much for joining us. I'm Luann Fulmer here with Cris Wallace. And this is the Rocket City Retirement Show. I want to give you Chris's website to wgfinancialgroup.com. And remember, you can always check us out on Facebook, WG Financial Group 256. And then you can pick up anything that Cris might add throughout the week that he would like to add additionally to maybe comments that he's made on our show. So that you can always find us on Facebook as well. And then, of course, podcast. Anywhere you get podcasts, look for this show, the Rocket City Retirement Show. And you can listen back to our past shows or finish listening to this show if you didn't get through all of it. But we are happy to have you along with us today. We're going to get into our conversations. Now, Cris, do you want me to bring up the young people and how they are, they're planning micro retirements, borrowing against their goals for their future selves? This is kind of cool.
This was interesting.
Yeah.
First of all, I got to say, I do not agree with this trend.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. So essentially what this article, what you're mentioning here about this article is that some younger people are taking like breaks before they get to retirement, and they're saving their money, and they're taking, in some cases, a few months off of work to kind of go do some travel and do things while they're younger. And, by doing this,
it interrupts their compounding,
savings.
Right? I think of their compound interest. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Because some people are pausing contributions to their retirement plan so that they can save a little bit extra so that they can take these trips. And the crazy thing was this, I think this came out of the Wall Street Journal, but it said that nearly 80% of recent college graduates agree with this.
Oh my.
Now, I think and I can't do this, and I won't do this because I can't, but if I could make recordings of some of the meetings that I've been in where people haven't saved enough, that would probably wake people up, especially that are thinking, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a really good idea because I see it trending on TikTok." No, stop it. Save aggressively. We're big advocates for putting 15% of your pay into your long-term retirement savings so that you can get out at a later date. I hear people all the time say, well, what if I don't make it to retirement? It's like, listen, I can't think like that myself. I literally can't, because statistically you'll be there. And I just think with some of the meetings that I've had to do with individuals and families, and I've had to look at them and say, you're not ready at this point. You're 4 or 5 more years, and then we can have that discussion about you actually retiring. So it sounds cool. And again, I think the article itself is kind of catchy. It's like micro retirement and what young people are doing, kind of borrowing against themselves. I think it comes with some pretty good risk there. And I'm just not willing to do that. Personally, I'm not. And if you've been listening to the show long enough, people know I'm a late saver, took money to start the business, and, I raised 3 kids. I say I raised 3 kids. Jennifer did most of the work.
Jennifer,
she's phenomenal. She's awesome. But, in terms of finances, those 3 kids are they're pretty expensive now that they're in college. And my daughter with her college, and then what we call the Amazon factor, it's like having another set of twins. But anyway.
Oh, dear. Yes.
Yeah, so that's the micro retirement thing.
Okay.
It sounds cool. I'm just not a big fan of it, Luann.
I'm with you on that. And that brings us to this survey that we're going to talk about, how 2 in 5 Americans regret not having saved enough for retirement, or maybe even just their emergency fund. So think about that. So here young people are going, oh, I'm going to just take a little mini retirement here. Probably not a good idea if so many Americans are worried that they haven't saved enough for retirement. And Cris, I was like you, too. My husband and I, my story. We just never saved. We were so busy with the kids in all of their events and activities, and we hardly saved at all. It's embarrassing to even think about it when we were making our most money. And so then we were like, oh, 50 now. We're 50. We better get serious about this. And so now we paid off our credit cards. We sold the big house, moved into something that's more affordable. And now we're saving, and now we're doing better than ever. So we're setting ourselves up for success in retirement. But let's talk about those financial regrets that people have.
Yeah. The first part of this article really stated that really like 4 out of 5 Americans have financial regret. Like you, I can look back at many, many areas of my life and have regret, but let's just, stick to the financial side of things. I have regret I didn't save enough. And if I get into the specifics of this article, 22% of the people regret not saving early enough for retirement. And that was really the number one thing that most people mention.
Yeah.
It's my number one thing.
Right.
If I can look back, if I could go back in time and sit down with my 18, 19-year-old self, number one, I would tell myself to shut up and listen to some of your adults. Not that I didn't listen to adults, but I would make sure that I paid attention to those that were good with their money.
Right.
I didn't have a money mentor. I've talked with my dad about this before.
Right.
He apologized for not being that. He doesn't even owe me an apology for that.
No.
But that was the number one. 22% of people regret, out of the 77% of people that have financial regret, 22% of them said not saving enough for retirement. 18 was not saving enough for emergency expenses.
Right.
Raising my hand there. Hello, guilty, right? I didn't do that early. And then 14%, I've talked about this a number of times on the show, is taking on way too much credit card debt. And that is, again, raising my hand there, guilty, and just the type of society that we live in, I think lends itself to wanting to keep up with the Joneses. And by doing that, we're not able to save as much. We're not able to put enough away for emergency expenses. And it makes us want to do the credit card thing. And hey, let's not forget inflation.
Yeah.
I mean, what's happened the last 2 years? I mean, you look at car insurance up over the last 1 year, 22%. If you look at just compounded inflation over the last couple of years, north of 20, I mean, that's a lot. And it's making it very difficult on people. And if you look at the average credit card balances here in the U.S., it's just skyrocketed because I think people are still trying to keep their head above water. They're trying to buy groceries. And I just think it makes it really, really tough on people. So I'm not, on the show, I'm not bad mouthing you for not doing some of these things. I'm right there with you. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of cool about our firm is I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And I grew up in a plant, and I grew up, being an engineer in a plant, and then eventually became a plant manager. And so I had to walk alongside of those individuals in my plant because I knew if they didn't perform, I didn't have a job. Mm-hmm. And so I take that same mentality into my business today as a certified financial planner and financial advisor here at the office, is walking that journey with clients. I'm 51 today. So I'm in that same ballpark and that same sort of mindset. And I'm literally walking hand in hand with people, kind of walking this journey together as we go towards this road of retirement. Now, because I'm a late saver, I'm probably going to be working a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. And that's okay because I absolutely love what I do. I enjoy helping people. But I think most of all, what I enjoy is really the interaction and seeing the expressions on faces when we uncover something that's positive, or, we've got a plan, and you can see the stress just kind of, just go off their face a little bit when you're sitting in meetings.
Yes.
That part of it is good. And like I said, just kind of walking hand in hand with them, as we do this journey together and we start building out retirement plans. I think that is what's most satisfying and really gratifying to me. So if you're listening to the show, this is really the first half of it. So if you're on Apple, if you have an iPhone, you can go to Apple Podcast. If you're on Spotify, you can go to Spotify and you can pick up the Rocket City Retirement Show there. Just search Rocket City Retirement Show. And you can listen to the rest of this episode because you're only getting the 30-minute version if you're on the way to church. And you can go to those platforms and listen to the whole show. If you'd like to give us a call to set up your discovery session, you can do that by calling 256-937-2010, 256-937-2010. Call now for your discovery session.
Don't panic in uncertain market times. Let Cris Wallace be your trusted guide. Call Cris Wallace today at 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010.
Wait. Now, wait a little longer. Great. You may have just increased your lifetime income by tens of thousands of dollars. That's how Social Security can work for you. The longer you wait, the more money you may get. Deciding when to start taking your Social Security benefits is one of the most important retirement decisions you'll make. Cris Wallace and the team at WG Financial Group can show you the options and help make the right decision for you and your situation. Call them today, 256-937-2010. You spent decades paying in. Optimize what comes out. Cris Wallace and the WG Financial Group team can help you squeeze every penny out of your Social Security benefits. Don't wait any longer. Call now, 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010. Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government.
Have I saved enough? Will my retirement last? If these are some of the questions you may have, it may be a good time to set up a visit with Cris Wallace. Just text the word VISIT to 256-937-2010 to schedule a meeting today.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Cris Wallace. Of course, he's a certified financial planner. He has the education. And then, of course, he's the financial advisor there at WG Financial Group, along with several others. He's president of his firm, WG Financial Group. So happy to have you along with us today. And we're talking right now just about...
I'm sorry, Lou Ann. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I got to say this because I'm over here about to bust a gut laughing. I'm trying to keep it in so I don't do it into the microphone. So when I'm talking about my journey as a growing up in the plants and all that, I'm hearing myself wanting to say I grew up in a middle class family.
Like no!
Presidential candidates.
Don't even.
But I didn't.
Don't even. And both of your parents had doctorates. Yeah.
No,
you were middle class.
Poor class family. We were. My mom. Yeah, we didn't have a lot. So anyway, I'm talking about how I grew up, and that's how I was thinking. I was like, oh gosh, should I say it? And I couldn't stop laughing. So anyway, carry on. Okay. We'll keep on with the show.
I love it. Good little laugh there. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good laugh.
But we're talking right now just about how so many Americans regret not having saved enough for retirement and their emergency funds. So what would be the reasons, do you think, that why so many Americans have regrets going into retirement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think for starters, I think when we're younger, and again, when I say this, I'm grouping myself in this, group of people that I may be speaking to. I think we tend to forget that time doesn't wait for anybody. And, we've seen that with our family members that we've lost. We've seen it with ourselves. If we pick up a photograph of ourselves and we're like, wow, that was only 15 years ago, but wow, look how different I look now. And the thing that we forget about is that really time waits for no one. So when we're talking about saving money and investing, time is probably the most valuable asset. You could really make an argument that time is the most valuable asset. And I also believe that, when we're talking about regret, I believe that as humans, we just have this tendency to want to be more pessimistic. And I'm not 100% sure why that is, but it's definitely something that I notice with many of my clients. I can tell you as a man, as I've aged, the way that I look at life is different than I did when I was in my 20s. So, you hear that phrase, grumpy old men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
get off
some
my
days
lawn.
I'm going to be honest with you, like being fully transparent right here. Some days Chris is grumpy old Chris. I mean, and my wife will tell you. So I can totally relate again to that. But I think when it comes to regrets, we also tend to carry those regrets with us for long periods of time. And if I'm looking at how the world is kind of structured today, with everything kind of being posted on social media, it can really cause us to compare ourselves to other people. And if we find ourselves not measuring up, we may be tempted to, whip out that credit card and incur more debt. Mm-hmm. And I think so many people today find themselves and this is important. So if you're kind of half listening, I really want you to tune in here. I think today many people find themselves putting a lot of faith into material things. And if there's one thing that I've learned growing up and as I've aged, is that this world and the things of this world will always leave you empty. And that has something I've really started to grasp onto as I've started to get older. And this is really one of the reasons we have our motto as plan, retire, and play, because we want families that we serve to make memories with their family members. And I 100% think it's okay to want to leave money, but I'm just more of a memories guy. And just personally speaking, I can remember very specific things that my grandparents did with me when I was growing up. So, for example, when I would go over to their house, I always remember my grandmother and my grandfather having a big supply of Little Debbie oatmeal patties. Oh my gosh, I love those things.
Oh, those are good.
And I can remember, I can visually see it right now.
Yes.
My grandmother had the tin Charles chips, that came in the tin can.
Oh.
She would have the tin can on her counter, and it would have the Charles chips and the potato chips. And another memory that I have is when school would start. And this is before I started work. And so you could say I was like middle school, very, very early high school. My grandmother would always take me shopping. My grandmother worked for a department store called Rich's. And I grew up in Georgia, as most people know. And my grandmother would always take me shopping, and she would buy me like a full outfit, a shirt, pants, belt, and shoes. And so I really remember that. And honestly, when it comes to those type of memories, I almost feel like I'm getting a little choked up here, but when it comes to those, there's no amount of money that can buy that.
Nope.
None. So we're encouraged in our families, and it really makes me smile. And I kid you not, like there's no greater joy for me than to be working with a family. And when we're doing their review and they're telling me, hey, look, we're going to the Panhandle this weekend and my whole family's coming, kids and grandkids. Live your life in a loving way so that you will have little to no regrets. That is my best advice for any retiree out there today.
That is awesome. That is excellent advice. I love it. No regrets. You a fan of the movie We're the Millers?
I haven't seen it, no.
Oh, gosh, you've got to see it.
We're the Millers?
We're the Millers, the one with Jennifer Aniston and Jason, what's his name? Jason that did the soccer Netflix thing. Anyway.
If it's not a Denzel Washington movie or Russell Crowe, I probably ain't seen it.
Oh, man. It's with Jennifer Aniston. It's funny. I swear you guys have to watch it. You will love it because every time it comes on television, you'll want to watch it again. But anyway, there's a line in there. This kid, he's a carnival guy, and he has tattooed on his chest, no regrets, but it's spelled R-A-G-R-E-T.
I've seen the previews.
Not even one letter. No regrets. Not even one letter.
And he's like, nope. I've seen the previews to that. It's hilarious.
It's one of my favorites. So anyway, okay. So let's move on to the people. We're looking at the survey that was done, and I got to see if I can get that in front of me by bank rate and the regrets that Americans have as far as saving for retirement. And if those say that they do have those financial regrets, are they at least making progress now, to maybe undo some of those errors that they are regretting?
Yeah, I think sometimes, well, let me answer the question. Some are. Right. I mean, some people are, and almost half are not. And that's really what the numbers boil down to. But I think sometimes when you have those regrets, there's a certain number, and it looks like about half in this case, that can use that as motivation. Sometimes fear motivates people, and really the fear of not being able to retire because you made some bad decisions earlier will whip your rear end into shape. So about 40% of people who have had a financial regret haven't really made any progress in the last 12 months. Another 44% say that they've made some progress. So they're trying to work towards, being better and not having those regrets. Good. And really only 16% say they've made significant progress. So you've got, if I'm looking at the numbers here, you got about 60% of the people that are working towards, making better progress so that they can, get rid of some of those financial regrets. So again, I think they're using that as motivation to kind of kick them in the pants a little bit.
So then why, in your opinion, aren't people able to make more progress on these issues?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons. I mentioned earlier, I think that there's an element of keeping up with the Joneses. I think that's some of it. I mean, if you look at America today, if you've ever traveled overseas, like to Europe and maybe some other countries, they don't have like some of the luxury items that we have. America, and I love America. It's the best nation by far on earth, but we're kind of greedy, if I'm being honest. And, just think about when mortgage rates dropped back during COVID and shortly after, you had people living in perfectly good homes going, hey, let's go get a bigger home,
True.
And I don't disagree with that either from an asset standpoint, because you're, improving your net worth and really improving your financial position. But was the house you were in good enough? And, you see people driving, 6-figure cars nowadays. And it's like, do you really need a 6-figure car?
No.
5-figure cars got 4 wheels too and an engine. Yeah. It'll get you to A and B too. And a used car will also. So there's that aspect of it. Keeping up with the Joneses, or just wanting to have nice things. Again, placing more faith in material things. And again, I'm guilty of that, right? I'm definitely not saying I've never done that. But so there's that aspect. But I also think right now that just with inflation as high as it's gone, it's made it harder on people. And when you look at inflation and the way that it's kind of run up here in the past couple of years, it has really made it difficult on the younger generation. So I have twin sons that are almost 22. Will they be 22 by the time this airs?
Oh,
I'm going to give them a shout out and happy birthday anyway.
Yeah. Happy birthday, guys, Caleb and Christian.
Yeah. So they'll be 22. So they're, in college, and when they get out, they are going to have a more expensive young life than the person graduating in 2017, 2018, 2019. Yeah. And the same will be said for a retiree. Luann, you're approaching that retirement age. And when you go into retirement, congratulations, you're going to have a more expensive retirement because of what inflation's done.
Yeah.
Now, and that's really the tricky part about the numbers that we see on TV, when they say, oh, inflation's coming down. Okay, the rate in which inflation was trending up is coming down, but the prices are still elevated. And I've said a number of times on the show, that's really the not so great part about inflation is the permanent elevation in price. You can throw numbers out there on the TV all day. Oh, inflation's down to 2.8% or whatever. That hamburger that I always talk about is still $12 because of what happened a couple of years ago. And that's kind of what the really bad part about that is. And that really impacts the younger generation because they're not at their peak earning at this point. And then when you flip it to the retiree, they're retired. They turn off the faucet of income. Now they're in a fixed income, most of which probably doesn't keep up with inflation. And it's hurting them. It's the people in the middle, that's in their 45 to 55 range where you're kind of more in that peak earning years. And that, you're less impacted. I mean, don't get me wrong. The cost of groceries is still there, but you're able to absorb it a little bit more because you actually make more money. So this is why I think, as far as people trying to get a jump start and get ahead, it's difficult right now because just the sheer cost of things for the younger generation and then also the retiree.
So, Chris, what's your advice then to people, like us, maybe a little bit older, heading into retirement with some financial regrets?
Yeah. So first thing I like to say, I say it in my own life, is you got to keep digging. I've been through difficult times, just like, many people listening to the show out there. There's a lot of people listening to the show, a lot of people that we work with who will tell me that they made a lot of sacrifices early in life and now they're, successful in where they are today. So that would be number one thing. Keep digging. You got to keep going. Can't stop. Don't wait for a handout. Keep working hard. And that's really the main thing, is keep working hard. The other thing too is I mentioned sacrifice. Sometimes, you're not, how do I say this nicely? Because I used to feel this way, almost an entitlement. I deserve this new car. No, actually, really, you don't. And sometimes it's okay to tell yourself no and make that sacrifice and maybe drive the beater a little bit longer. I know it doesn't look cool. I know you can't make TikTok videos with it, but you'll be TikToking away in your 50s when you got 6-7 figures in that bank account and that retirement account. So make some sacrifices because I think, if you're sitting there trying to ignore the issue and hoping that it'll go away, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you have to address it and you have to come up with a plan to really combat that. And you can do that by continuing to work hard. And, I've said it before. I've heard this said before. When was the best time to plant a tree? And somebody will say like 30 years ago. Well, when's the next best time? Today. So make that decision today. Start digging in, keep working hard, make those sacrifices. And I think it holds true with retirement planning as well. I've heard a lot of people say to me, I mean, shoot, if I had $1 for every time I've heard this, I probably wouldn't need to work anymore. But they say, Chris, I wish I'd met you several years ago. Yeah. And my response is really always the same. We can say that, all of us can say that about various things in life. And I'll just say, hey, I'm glad you decided to make it a priority today, because if it wasn't 30 years ago, then it's the day to plant that tree. And I think there's no better day than today to get started.
I love it. All right, let's give out your information. You may call or text the word visit to 256-937-2010. Get on Chris's calendar if you want to get started on planning with Cris, planning out your retirement. 256-937-2010, the website wgfinancialgroup.com. And we are so happy to have you along with us today. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show with my friend Cris Wallace. I want to mention, if you want to do a lunch and learn, Cris is doing lunch and learns. So if you're the owner or a president, maybe even HR manager of a business, Cris and his team would welcome the opportunity to hold a lunch and learn for your employees. This is complimentary, okay, for businesses right here in Huntsville. So again, just call the number to schedule that complimentary lunch and learn for your employees, 256-937-2010. So, Cris, we've been talking about inflation, just everything going on right now. And really, truly, we have all experienced so many events. If you think back in recent years, the pandemic, which I hate thinking back about it, but it did happen. Recent history. Then that market crash, of course. Interest rates went up, inflation going up, global unrest, all these things. And I feel like I feel like I don't have much control right now over our future. But you're saying actually you can kind of help people take back control of their financial future. So I guess, first of all, let's talk about where we are right now, financially speaking, and how we got here.
Yeah. First thing I want to do, I want to dip back into something you said just a few minutes ago was the lunch and learns. I want to kind of speak to that.
Okay.
So we've done those for a couple of businesses here in Huntsville. I know firms have quote unquote people that they work with, but where we found and really received good feedback is for us to be able to go into a small business and talk about retirement preparation, because some companies have these people that can talk to their employees about their 401k and all, and that's all fine and well. That particular individual is probably not going to go into the details of like the steps and those critical ages that you're going to run into: 55, 59 and a half, 62, 65, 73, 75. I mean, there's all these different ages that are milestones in your life, and just things to kind of prep you for retirement. And that's where I feel like we're really good on the show. We do a really good job of disseminating a lot of information. And I think for small businesses that have asked us to come in, and for those who have heard it and they think about it and then they forget about it, put it on your calendar and give us a call. I'll be happy to come in and speak to your employees. It's no gimmicks. I'm not coming in and saying, "Oh, if you come see me, you get this free report." We don't do that kind of stuff on the air. We like to teach and educate. And when you're taught and educated, you tend to make better decisions overall. So anyway, just wanted to kind of touch on that for the lunch and learns here in the Huntsville area. So when we talk about 2020, man, you mentioned that it feels like it was eons ago.
I know, right?
At this point.
Yeah.
But it was a rough time. If you remember back in 2020, I think the S&P fell somewhere around 34 some odd percent in like 22 or 23 trading days. It was a quick crash. I think there was a lot of unrest globally. I don't think anybody knew exactly what was happening, in the beginning of things. We're all kind of worried, and none of us had really ever seen this. And so really the big response that, I don't want to blame all of this inflation on this particular incident, but that's when all the stimulus started to go in the system, and we couldn't go anywhere. So, and you couldn't go anywhere means you couldn't go to work. So everybody has all of this money kind of sitting in a bank account, and none of the suppliers globally are able to produce. And so there's this, this bottleneck, if you will. So we've got all this money and nobody's making parts. And now you got places like car dealerships that have just a few cars on the lot and they're selling for way above sticker. And that's never happened again. And as far as I remember, all through my life, it's like, every time you go to a parking lot or a car lot, you can negotiate your way down. And if you take cash, they'll take less. And all this stuff, I remember. That wasn't the case in 2020, 21, and 22. I mean, you're paying top dollar for vehicles out there. So, you had this massive stimulus response, and then you get the next administration, the current administration comes in and they put even more into the system, even though I didn't feel like they needed to do it, nor did a lot of top economists. And that resulted in higher inflation rates. And then you get high inflation. Now you got to jack up rates. And here we are and trying to unwind this mess, hopefully, and obtain, what some are going to say is impossible, a soft landing. So that's kind of where we were and how we got here.
Okay, so we obviously can't predict the future. I know you sometimes we joke about you having a crystal ball, but it doesn't work very well. No, I'm kidding. But, what is your best guess as to how this is going to unfold in the future?
Well, I kind of alluded to it in the very first part of the show, but, there was so much money pumped into the system that it literally has to bleed all the way out to get back to some sort of normalcy in terms of like signals and things like that. So if there was, I'm not a betting guy, but if I were a betting guy, I would bet that we are probably going to have more of a softer landing than this big crash that I see, on social media a lot.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because of all the stimulus that was kind of pumped into the system. But the one key factor here is this: if inflation, if it reignites, then we got the 1970s all over again. So we've got inflation coming down, and then now it's going to turn around and go back up again. So that's going to be the key factor is with these rate cuts, does that, stimulate the economy? Does that re-stimulate inflation? I don't think anybody knows that yet. And so I think as long as inflation stays under control, I think we can kind of have what we would call a soft landing. And then the other thing that we got coming right around the corner that I don't think enough people are talking about is the sunsetting of the tax code at the end of 2025.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about it all the time, though.
We do. Yeah, we do. And we talk about it with prospects and clients as well. And, I don't know what's going to happen to tax rates in the future, but I can tell you today by law, they're going up. If nothing's done, by law, they're going to go up. They're going to revert back when the Tax Cuts and Job Acts legislation expires. They're going to revert back to where they were when Obama was in office. And I've talked about on the show before, when the 12 becomes the 15, that's a 25% tax increase. And when the 22 becomes the 24, when the 22 becomes the 25, that's another, I think that's a 14% tax increase. Both of those, as I like to say, are in the middle class brackets.
Yeah.
And one of the things I hear politicians say all the time, we're not raising taxes on the middle class. We're not. Yes, you are. Because by law today, if nothing's done, it will revert back and it will raise the taxes on the middle class. You're going to have the standard deduction drop. So there's a lot of things that I think have to play out, but I don't think that we're in this like 2008 type of time frame. I don't think there's always some nefarious stuff going on behind the scenes, I'm sure. So I don't want to be like I'm naive to that, but I don't think there's something that's around the corner, a boogeyman that's going to cause like a 50% crash. Because I went over the numbers earlier. If we go all the way back to like 1929, the market's only been negative more than 20%, 6 times total. And so are we going to have the 7? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that we're going to have that. So I think we could have a soft landing if I remain positive and speak positivity on the air, maybe.
There you go. I like that though.
But hey, let me say this. Make no mistake about it. We're always going to have stock market volatility.
Yeah.
We are. I mean, so you're in the market, you got to kind of get used to that. This is part of the ride. You have to zoom out, as I like to say. When in doubt, zoom out. In other words, look at the long-term graph and it'll go up into the right with some volatility.
Okay. So that's exactly what you're doing with people. Not a rosy picture right now. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but talk about steps that you're taking right now with people to help them. If they're feeling out of control, how do you help them regain control of their financial future, no matter what's going to happen in the future? Talk about what you're telling them.
Build a plan, period. Build a plan. If there's one thing that I hear from almost every single person that walks the door is they tell me, I don't have a plan. Now, I work with a lot of engineers here in Huntsville, a lot of very successful people, business owners, you name it. And they have things, but they don't have a plan. They have these accounts spread out. They don't have a clear tax picture of what their taxes are going to look like in retirement. So they, in essence, don't have a plan, even though they're very intelligent. They have the spreadsheets and they bring those in, and that's all super helpful, makes my job a lot easier. But in terms of a plan, they really don't have a plan. So I hear from a lot of people, Chris, the reason I came to see you is we don't have a plan. Now, I'm going to walk you through how we do it. Okay. So when someone comes in, they're going to come in for what we call a discovery session. And through the years, my discovery session has gotten more and more detailed. And I would say right now, we're really, really good at that very first meeting, digging in, really answering questions that you don't know to ask in a lot of cases, and really uncovering things that, I've had people look at me and said, no one's ever asked me that before. And there's usually 2 or 3 things that's going to happen in that first meeting that I'm going to bring up that no one's ever asked you before. One gentleman actually told me in one of my last meetings was, I'm glad you didn't start the meeting off by saying, so what do you see yourself doing in retirement? That's not the way we start the meeting. It's totally different. And when he told me that, it kind of made me feel good. So that discovery session is really designed for me to collect some information, for us to have really good conversation about you, your current picture, your outlook, where you're trying to go, your accounts, Social Security, Medicare. I mean, you name it. We talk about just about everything in that first meeting. The second meeting we do is what we call a high-level strategy session. So in that meeting, you're going to come in. We will have the framework of a plan built out. We will have run some reports. We'll have some data. We'll have a potential tax savings that we think that we can help with along with your CPA by implementing some tax efficient strategies. That meeting lasts about an hour. And what we're trying to do with prospects in that meeting is we're trying to make sure, are we on the right page? Are we on the same page? We're focusing on retirement income optimization, investments and risk mitigation, tax efficient strategies. Are we on the right track? If the answer is yes, and they like what they see and they want to see more information, then we do a third meeting where we go into a lot more detail and we say, okay, should you become a client of ours, then this is exactly how we are going to do it. This is exactly what we're recommending. Here's what we do. Here's what you do, and we just lay it out. And in that third meeting, we kind of preface the third meeting kind of in the second meeting by letting someone know that if you come in for that third meeting, we don't apply pressure, but our intention is for you to have had enough information presented by that third meeting where you can make an informed decision on whether or not you'd like to join our firm as a client. And so we go over that. We kind of go over the specifics of what we're looking to do for many people that we're working with. So we do run a 3-meeting process. It's non-threatening. I always have another advisor in the room with me. I have that person in there to take additional notes. Everything that we talk about is held in confidence. I don't sell your information. It doesn't go any further than our firm. If you don't become a client, any information that we've collected on paper goes into the shredder. I mean, you name it. So, it's just, we take it very seriously. My team is very good. I've got some really good news. I have another certified financial planner starting with us at the middle of October. So that'll make 3 of us on staff at this point. Yep. And Graham, who's on the show most of the time, is also testing in November. Yay. So at that time, I'll have 4. We take a lot of pride in our education so that we can disseminate that information back to the people that we sit down with and educate them. So it's really important. It's been a goal of mine to have every person that touches a client or a prospect from a planning standpoint to make sure that they have that CFP designation. And I'll tell you a quick story, and I know we got to bounce off of here, but I had someone come in the office the other day and she said, do you know why I'm here? And I was like, because you want help with retirement? She said, yes. And she started pointing her finger. And I was like, what's she pointing? I turned around. She's pointing at the certified financial planner plaque that I have on the wall. Oh. She said, that's why I'm here.
Wow.
Because I understand the value of that designation and I've done my research and that's why I'm here. So anyway, if you'd like to come in for a discovery session, you can give us a call at 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010. Give us a call for your discovery session. I hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
Investment advisory products and services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. Insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisory requirements. AEWM and WG Insurance Services are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. WG Financial Group is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial Group. This radio show is a paid placement.